This episode, like all episodes, is brought to you by our beloved Patreon donors. This week, we'd like to thank Julia, Ryan, and Jalen. And an extra special thanks this week to Kathleen. Kathleen is literally just TikTok sensation Tariq the Corn Kid, named the Corn Ambassador of South Dakota. Did you know that John Milton went blind as he aged, and therefore he could not finish writing Paradise Lost himself?
I did not know that. That's fascinating.
Even more fucking fascinating. Do you know how he finished writing Paradise Lost?
I don't know. How?
Thank you for indulging me. He dictated it to his daughters, which is so charming on the one hand. And on the other hand, it's kind of ironic and hilarious because he had very antiquated thoughts about the education of women. So the fact that he was very I don't know if girls should learn to read and write early in his life.
However, I will rely upon them. And if if I send them a shitty word choice, they'll just kind of look down at it and go, just gonna change that.
Yeah.
Just fix that a little. Much. All right, that's my headcanon now for Paradise Lost. Is that
exactly. The latter half of Paradise Lost is just Milton's daughters being like, and that's a clunky word choice. I'm just gonna, rewrite that.
I am.
Yeah, so you're fucking
for
welcome.
those enjoying this in a visual medium. Visual medium. I do in fact have, in preparation for today's recording, I have my copies of Paradise Lost. So this one belonged to my grandmother. And it is, in fact, so old that the binding's completely falling apart. The last page has totally fallen out. I don't actually read this. I just keep it. It's a great little thing. This is the one that I actually read. This I got for like $1 at some
For those who are only listening, it's just a standard trade paperback.
Yeah, and it's got all my notes, and I've got stuff highlighted in it, and this is something I could loan to people and not be sad. And then I also have this one.
Jesus fuck! What is that thing?
Which was rescued.
It looks like the Necronomicon.
It is my physically largest book that I own, and it has these absolutely fantastic illustrations by Gustave Doré. Who knows? Don't at me about pronunciation of people who might be French
been the Bitches
or
Get Riches
something else.
Art History Hour.
And yes, this one I keep just for the fantastic illustrations. It's in slightly better shape, but still not really like something that I want to put my oily fingers all over. So yeah, that's the only thing that I own 3 copies of a single book.
Yeah, you're such a minimalist when it comes to books. I'm shocked you have 3 copies. Okay, so it really is your favorite work of poetry.
When you need some dough, you don't know where to go in this patriarchal capitalist hellscape. Well, here's the sitch, we're gonna help you, sis, because bitches get riches. Bitches get riches. Bitches get riches. Bitches get riches. And so can you.
I'm Piggy.
And I'm Kitty.
And we're the bitches in Bitches Get Riches.
We are an unnecessarily edgy modern adaptation of a beloved classic.
And we're here to make everything worse.
Our time on this planet is limited.
So let's get started.
Today's letter comes to us from Patreon donor Jordan. Thank you so much, Jordan.
Thanks,
we love
Jordan.
you. Patreon.com/bitchesgetriches. That's where you get your questions answered and also get more photos of our pets. Which,
yes, like 100%
so
more pet photos. Yeah, that's what the people want. The people demand pet photos.
I don't know if it's what they want, but it is what they get. All right, so the lovely Jordan asks, hello, bitches. Something has really been bothering me as my spouse and I try to plan for our future. We are both looking forward to early retirement, and every single bit of advice I see for where to retire just doesn't take into account being gay at all. All of the retire here for the lowest taxes and best chance at a good life advice points to states with awful track records about all queer stuff ever. Looking at you, Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, Montana. My queer heart is so frustrated that I am essentially ignored in this advice again and again. Pretty standard in personal finance, I know. And I would love your combined take on what to look for in a place to retire that takes into account social safety nets and not literally trying to legislate my spouse and I out of existence. High standards. I guess I'm feeling pretty disheartened about the idea that I have to retire to a state that's going to possibly harm my rate of return and make early retirement harder just because I'm queer. Do I suck it up and move to Florida? Are those taxes worth it to support those broader social safety nets? And so we just suck it up and pay those? Or do we live in a queer haven like upstate New York or Vermont? Hell, I guess.
This question is so good. It's a rich text, if you will.
Yeah, I love
Much
it.
like Paradise Lost.
Oh, okay. So thank you for that transition. Might I just read a little bit?
You may, my dear.
So when I read this question, this was the very first thing that came to my mind. I'm just going to let you enjoy it. This is a speech delivered by Satan, who's kind of looking around hell going, wait, is this where we have to live for forever because we lost the war with heaven?
Yikes.
Yike. Big yike. Okay.
Yeah, speech
so
me,
this
Satan.
is him kind of processing. He's processing. Is this the region? This the soil, the clime, said then the lost archangel? This the seat that we must change for heaven? This mournful gloom for that celestial light? Be it so, since he who now is sovereign can dispose and bid what shall be right. Furthest from him is best whom reason hath equaled, force hath made supreme above his equals. Farewell, happy fields where joy forever dwells. Hail, horrors! Hail, infernal world! And thou profoundest hell, receive thy new possessor, one who brings a mind not to be changed by place or time. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. What matter where, if I be still the same, and what I should be all but less than he whom thunder hath made greater? Here at least we shall be free. The Almighty hath not built here for his envy, will not drive us hence. Here we may reign secure, and in my choice to reign is worth ambition, though in hell. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven.
Said
Milton.
Said anyone who's ever moved to Florida. You can choose to reign in hell and, you know, make of hell what you will of it, or you can choose the easy, relatively pain-free existence of living in heaven. In other words, like, you can choose to move to Wyoming and make it your personal project to make it a better place for queer folks to live, even though that's going to be like a struggle and require a lot of activism and a lot of years of hard work on your part. Or you can move to Vermont, where you might be like, wow, am I even woke enough to be here? Like, you can change anywhere you live. You can make yourself a positive little community, and you can try and spread the good news and be a force for change. Be the change you want to see, said Milton.
I think, yeah, absolutely. Like, I think this boils down to, like, you got to pick your poison. There are a lot of benefits that come from living in a high cost of living area, especially for a queer person, because those areas tend to have better social safety nets, better infrastructure, and a friendlier state for queer people to live, where your rights aren't kind of constantly under attack whenever they appoint some new person who's got to be up their ass because they haven't put a penis up their ass recently enough.
Because trans babies are allowed to exist and be slightly comfortable.
How very dare they?
How very dare they?
It is very much, and I say this as someone who I identify as pansexual. I often kind of shorten that, use bisexual as a shorthand, just because not everyone is familiar with the term, and I'm too lazy to explain it every time.
This means you really get off on Cuisinart, right? pansexual? Okay, great. Just making sure I'm following
Absolutely.
along.
Pots,
Cool.
pans, casserole dishes. Oh, Milton.
Stir fry me, baby.
And I grew up in a very, very, very small rural town in the Midwest. I was bullied for the way that I was. I was cornered in a bathroom once by young men who told me they were going to rape me straight. So that's like, I really want you to know that I don't say any of this lightly, that I know what it costs to live, what it costs emotionally as well as logistically to live in an area where you don't feel safe. And I don't want that for anyone. At the same time, queer people are everywhere. We're everywhere. We're
here. We're queer.
We want to get married on the ocean. Like, it's not that so many queer people end up sort of gravitating to the closest urban centers to usually just make it easier to like find each other, find support groups, and to kind of like disappear and blend in a little bit more and be allowed to live their own like private lives. But there are queer people all fucking over this good nation, all over this world.
I went to a business trip in Texas once, and it took me 2.5 seconds to find a gay bar with like rainbow flags outside and everything, and it was lovely.
Yeah. So many of the absolute icons of queer culture grew up in tiny towns. They maybe came to prominence in less prominent cities, like maybe the Atlantas as opposed to like the New York Cities or the San Franciscos. And over time, they stay there, they invest in that community, and they force that community to accept them. And I think there's real strength and real beauty in that struggle. I think that struggle is much easier when you have many people to share the load with. But I also respect that if someone's like, yeah, no, I want to retire and I want to like,
I want to be done struggling.
I want to train cats to, well, no, you can't train cats to do anything. I guess I just want to have 50,000 cats, and that's like my big retirement plan. And I don't want to be like an activist when I'm in my 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. Fine. I totally respect
fine.
That. But it does come
fine.
with a cost.
Do you want to do that activist work to try and make yourself safer? And do you want to pay for personal protection, or do you want to move into a place and have the systems already in place to protect you and your spouse and your community and, you know, not have to worry about it? I really think it comes out, it's a wash in the end. You know, you're paying either way, whether through taxes or through, you know, personal expenditure.
Queer people often feel very safe when they are in a major city, especially one that is noted for being very queer friendly. This in no way, shape, or form guarantees your safety. And I even want to expand that like you can be a person of color living in a very diverse area, and it doesn't mean that you're safe all the time. You can be a woman living in
literally
a very
anywhere.
friendly culture, and you will still run the risk of encountering people who want to harass you or stalk you or whatever. Like, the world is not a safe place for everyone who needs to share it. I also think there's often a misconception that like some areas are nice, some areas are friendly, some areas are hospitable, and some are not. There are, just as there are queer people everywhere, there are allies everywhere, and there are people who just don't know. And as soon as they meet a nice neighbor or a new friend or a new coworker, they go, oh, this wasn't what I thought it would be like. There's a pretty common phenomenon, especially down like in the American Deep South. There actually is a long history of sort of respecting people's individual quirks. And if you ask people in a general sense of like, how do you feel about gay people? They're like, no, don't like that. The Bible says blah, blah, blah. But then if you ask, okay, well, what about Uncle Jim? And they're like, oh, well, Uncle Jim.
He's different.
That's just
Uncle
the way
Jim's
he is.
different. Yeah.
I love Uncle Jim. He is the way he
Uncle
is.
Jim,
You
he
leave
is
him alone.
Bless his
I'll
heart.
kill you if you touch
come,
him.
Don't you come for Uncle Jim. I grew up not in the South, but in rural New England, which is pretty fucking conservative. And if you look at it on paper, you're gonna be like, ooh, that's a really really red spot you grew up in. That's pretty not gay friendly. But the truth of it is, like, not all low cost of living areas or not all conservative areas are as not gay friendly as you think. Like you were saying, we had this middle-aged gay couple in my hometown who were out, gay, proud, and they were business owners. They owned the local flower shop, and everyone knew them and everyone loved them. And
I love them. I haven't met them, and I love them.
They were
I want to
just
be
this
them.
like town fixture. They were always there at town meetings, and my parents and neighbors, who I would never at the time have been like, oh yeah, they're like big gay allies. They were like super friendly with them and supportive of them and like patronized their business and everything. And I grew up knowing like, oh, the gay couple in town owns the flower shop and they're cool. Like they're completely different from any legislation having to do with gay rights or whatever. And like it didn't ever, like, those people were valued members of the community, and their individual experience never factored into the broader societal understanding of gay rights and legislating those rights. So, I mean, that's obviously not a perfect solution, but it does show that, like, your life might not necessarily be in danger just because you're going to a place that has a low cost of living and you view it as not gay friendly. It might be extremely gay friendly to individuals.
Yeah, I think a lot of this honestly has to do with what is the level of like community trust and community support that is necessary for people to live their lives. If you want to hate gay people and you want to buy flowers in your tiny town growing up, you are going to have to drive for an hour to get to the next flower shop.
Literally.
So I think there is a lot more. There is sometimes, I think, a surprising level of tolerance in small, especially rural communities where, like, this is the person who has this kind of tractor. And if you need this kind of tractor, you got to go talk to this person. And I think there's a lot more tolerance sometimes than we expect for people based on what
Based
folks
on
in that area
necessity.
would describe as their eccentricities. You're kind of
Exactly.
allowed to be a little eccentric.
Investing newbies, this one's for you. Acorns is a micro-investing app for helpless babies.
It is a great option for beginning investors and anyone having a hard time saving because it is automatic and totally effortless.
Here's how she works. Every time you make a purchase, Acorns will round it up to the nearest dollar and not only save the difference for you, but invest it in the stock market. It is that simple.
Click the link in the show notes to start investing small with Acorns today. You're welcome.
I also think we're focusing too much on the extreme ends of the cost of living spectrum. For example, San Francisco, famously the epicenter of the gay rights movement, also famous for completely unaffordable housing. I have a friend who's lived in the same apartment for years and years and years and will never give up her lease because it's rent controlled. So, she super loves her gay community out there, as do her roommates, but like, the exchange is they can't afford even a rent-controlled apartment without roommates. On the other end of the spectrum, I was just in Ohio for a family funeral, and my husband and I, as we do, we were looking at real estate prices, and a 3-bedroom house with acres and acres of land was like $80,000.
Yeah.
I was just like, I have $80,000 in my couch cushions right now. I was just like, that's ridiculous. But, my cousin who lives in that area and is a young gay man, he is trying as fast as he can to get out of there because, yes, it's a low cost of living area and there's actually nothing going on for the gay community or otherwise. It's just a really dead place with no opportunity. So, those are two extremes of the cost of living spectrum, and I would consider neither one worthwhile if I was planning to retire early.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for our queer listeners, thinking about it this way, how important is it to you to share queerness with your immediate network. I think everyone needs and deserves a supportive and loving network. And for me, when I was in my teens and 20s, I needed to be around other gay people because I needed to, I had sucked up so much hatred and I needed to purify it in the waters of Lake Minnetonka. I needed to cleanse myself by surrounding myself with positive queer vibes. Given enough time, I really felt my own answer shift. When I was in my late teens, I made a decision to move to an extremely queer-friendly part of the country and attend an extremely queer-friendly school, which is where I met you,
hey,
my precious, my pet.
Yay.
And I'm obviously incredibly happy that I did that. As a result, my community has often had a disproportionately high number of queer folks in it, which is awesome. As I've gotten older, I'm now in my mid-30s, and it's less important to me that I share queerness as long as they kind of like get where I'm coming from. As long as they are people who are generally good and generally supportive, they don't have to like appreciate the same like media that I do or use the same language that I do or appreciate my fashion choices, like all those things that kind of intersect with queerness. They're a little bit less important, I think, as you get older. And I think this varies a lot from person to person. Like, do you really need a large and active and happy queer community around you? Or is it enough to find and build a coalition of good-hearted people, some of whom may be queer, but a lot of whom just statistically by the numbers are likely to be straight? And I think that answer can change for you over time. I truly do believe that good people are everywhere. Good people are all around us. But
Everywhere.
do I think that it is prudent to consider the likelihood of kind of a worst case? In Jordan's talking about making their plans for the future. If you want to move to a very low cost of living area, that you've done your research and you know that like, well, there's like a tiny little gay bar. And so like, we think we can find some folks and they'll introduce us to more folks and it'll all work. Awesome. Great. Do I think it's prudent as part of Jordan and their partner's plan to have a long-term sort of emergency plan that like, hey, if like terrible things start happening in our state politics where they're like actively trying to take our rights away, what is our line where we say up to here we stay and fight and past this we flee to a friendlier area?
We run away,
having a larger emergency fund for queer folks makes a ton of sense. I think having a kind of an emergency plan makes a lot of sense. But I think that is kind of true for everyone, because even if you are straight, white, cisgender, like upper middle class earner, there is no guarantee that when you move to a brand new area, you will be able to make friends. There is no guarantee of that. And it gets harder the older you get. So I think in many ways, like it's a risk that you have to take, yes, but it's a risk everyone takes. Can I go somewhere brand new and make new connections with people who don't know me, who haven't shared my exact life experience? It's a risk, baby, and we must take it all the time. And
it's a risk.
Yeah, I want you to live your best life.
Yeah, live your. That is bitches get riches in a nutshell. Live your best life frugally, please.
For real.
No, but I think that gets to the heart of this issue for us, which is really like you need to weigh the risks that you're open to accepting and the work that you're open to doing with the amount you're willing to pay. And if you're not willing to take on more risks, maybe you need to be willing to take on more cost of living or a higher cost of living, as the case may be. And honestly, like, I'm going to deviate from our personal finance guru brothers and sisters and say, like, I don't really consider cost of living all that much when I am making future decisions. When I was super young, right out of college, my husband and I chose what at the time was a much lower cost of living area to move to, and it has since, ballooned in popularity because of gentrifiers like us moving in.
Thanks a lot
and raising the cost. Exactly.
for ruining the American West.
We really did. We single-handedly turned the American West into the East Coast. I was walking around downtown Denver the other day, and like among all the construction cranes and stuff, I was like, this reminds me of downtown Boston way more than it did 10 years ago. So anyway.
Yeah. No one place ever stays static. If you go somewhere that's got a great community, like I feel like the likelihood of, I moved here because I have, 4 different friends here. Guess what? Those friends are going to move. Like,
and they're going to have babies.
Happen.
They're not going to have time for you, and it's going to suck. So I guess make queer friends because they statistically have fewer children.
Yeah, there you go. More people than ever in history identify as being at least a little queer.
And why do you think that is, Kitty?
A fluoride in the water. That's the main one. Yeah.
Clearly,
and also too much RuPaul's Drag Race. Those
Way
are
too
the
much
two.
RuPaul's. Yeah, no, exactly. Listen, we are like just a couple of years from making sure being a gay abortion doctor is the only path to citizenship in these United States. That's our goal.
Absolutely.
That is, I would call that the gay agenda.
That's our gay agenda.
That is our gay agenda. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I think absolutely, like, more people than ever are realizing that
There's somewhere on
cisgendered heterosexuality is a box that everyone is put into by default, and some of us are just so fucking gay that we have to crawl out of it and make our own goddamn box, and that's fantastic. But there's a lot of people left in that box who are kind of watching us crawl away going, yeah, like, I get it. Your box seems pretty nice too. And I think there's much less pressure for people to define themselves for life as being one kind of thing. There's many, many, many more terms that provide a lot of nuance that wasn't really possible in the past. Like, it used to be like
your pansexuality, your fetish for Cuisinart.
Exactly.
God.
Like you're normal or you're
said.
something else. And our idea of normal is like getting blurred at the edges more and more as time goes on. And I personally know that there are so many queer activists, queer entertainers, queer educators, queer librarians. Gay people are everywhere, and we are indoctrinating the children. I have so much faith in Gen Z and younger generations
I believe
to really
children are the future.
Make the world into a shockingly accepting and welcoming place.
Yeah. All right. Are you good with that?
I'm good with that. Listeners, if you want us to answer your question, go to bitchesgetriches.com and click Ask the Bitches. Our goal here at Bitches Get Riches is to help people, but we want to make a living wage for ourselves and our assistant doing so without being like a total piece of shit sellout. So if you believe in that mission and you want to help us achieve it, the easiest way to do that is to go to patreon.com/bitchesgetriches. We also accept one-time donations through paypal.com/paypalme/bitchesgetriches. And if you need more of our spicy wisdom, you can read our articles and follow us on social media, and you can do all that stuff at bitchesgetriches.com. All right, so is there anything else that they should know?
Yes. Okay. My favorite thrift store was having a 75% off sale the other day while I was out buying dog food, so I just had to go in because, you know me, if there's 2 things you can say about my clothing preferences, it's that I love a good thrift find and I never buy things for full price. And I went in, and the owner was on a lunch break, and her 84-year-old mother, Jean, was there filling in. And Jean was a goddamn delight. And Jean was like, what are you shopping for? And I was like, well, I'm a musician, and I'm looking for some sparkly things I can wear on stage, but also maybe some skirts for work. And Jean God bless her 84-year-old heart. She was just like, yes, I can totally see you in these sparkles and those sparkles. Anyway, Jean and I bonded in the 30 minutes that I was thrifting in this store, and I walked away with 2 sparkly shirts and 2 skirts because Jean is amazing. So this episode goes out to Jean at the thrift store on Tennyson Street. I love you, Jean.
To Jean, we love you. Thank you for supplying us with all of the spangles, sparkles, glitz,
Sequins.
glamour, and sequence that we rightfully deserve.
Exactly. Deserve. That's the right word for it. So, anyway.
Good to know. Bitches
Bitches
out.